It's a coup, baby.
It's a
It's
coup.
a coup. Sound like
I had
Austin
my
Powers.
cookies. I had my my Victoria Newland cookies, and I had my coup.
Yeah, it's the coup. Yeah, got a coup. Yeah, nothing to do with the 40-odd million Ukrainians that put up a staunch resistance for the last 4 years. It's all to do. If Americans were really good at coups, why did they suffer in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, yeah, and one of the things that's interesting about listening to trolls is they wouldn't like their agency taken away from them wherever the fuck they are, you know?
No.
So pick a country, unless they're Americans, and that's a whole different category.
It's normally a sweatshop in Laos now. It's got mobiles up on the wall, like loads of mobiles. And it's like,
well, if I look at the icons, right? If I look at the icons, I see a lot of basically post-colonial or people angry, justifiably, I think, also as well, by the way, about colonial eras, and they don't care about this imperial colonial era of Russia. They don't see it as that. They don't care about Georgians. No. If Armenia says we want to do this differently today and Russia throws a fit, no one goes, hey, who are you to say that Armenia can't do what they want? If they want to remove a Soviet statue, you know.
Yeah, it's all to do with money as well. That loyalties have gone out the window. Just look at America itself with tenant media, and you know, if people are doing anything for a buck these days, you know, even sell out a country.
Yeah,
that's and even, you know, Ukraine's suffering with that to a degree because of you know, they're quite poor communities, some of these. So, you know, when you start, maybe I'll torch a vehicle for, you know, $2,000. You know, it's like, to some of these guys, that's their next fix. That's their, you know, their next drink. That's going to keep them going for the, you know, at least 6 months. You know, so they get these people to torch these vehicles. You know, it's like, and that's good old social media. Hi everybody. Hi Just a Dot. Hi everybody. Good evening.
Yes, exactly.
It's going to be better than last evening.
So first, because we had a whole lot of missiles, I would like to hear the national anthem of Ukraine for a moment. Чогось наша славна Україна зазорилася. А ми тую червону підіймемо. А ми тою червоною ялиною підіймемо. А ми тою славну Україну розвеселимо. Okay, anyway, thank you, Taras and Kozatska. So Korea Kozatska, they are some of the finest musicians in all of Kyiv, all the guys in the ensemble. Anyway. But yeah, bro, how was your night? I remember you sending me a text about Zelensky says there will be a Reshnik. See you on the other side. So my message my message to Russia is fuck you bitches, I'm still here.
Just a quick one before we start. You've gone blurry for some reason. I don't know why.
It's my attitude problem.
No, I mean, your lens has gone blurry.
Oh,
I can't see properly. Yeah. There, that's better. You're coming back in.
All right, we'll get a little closer together. It's on manual, so
let's get a little closer.
Just get a little closer. Well, in fact, you know,
I texted.
You were so close. I made hamburgers for you.
You did. We met this week. How good was that? Yeah. I texted you last night and said, yeah, I just got a message from tertiary sources, and Zelensky put it out, and the US Embassy put it out, that we could be hit with Oreshniks. I put, see you on the flip side.
Like, yeah.
And then I didn't get anything, actually. We didn't get anything. We were quite quiet. I slept through the night. We didn't get much, but that just means that we're in the queue and we're probably going to get something, within the next week or something. Because it does show you, Russia can't actually hit everywhere all of the time, and it needs to stockpile and it needs to get weapons hand to mouth. It's sort of going. So it's sort of when you have this big show that it did last night. Superficially, it's not entirely accurate as to the scale of what Russia projects. We are some of the messaging I've seen today. Russia's holding back. It's got plenty of reserves, and it's not unleashing its full might. On the flip side of that, you're sitting there thinking, well, that means Putin's been quite happy for 1.3 million casualties then. Why hasn't he gone out for the all-out win? None of what you're saying makes any sense. No leader would sit there, I'm going to sacrifice 1.3 million of my own countrymen because I'm just going to be nice to the Ukrainians. I'll hold back a bit. No, I mean, it's just garbage, the stuff that's coming around today on social media. Absolute garbage.
Don't give Trump any ideas, by the way.
I think Putin is. I believe Putin this week said that he's going to confiscate any properties or any anything that if anyone's seen to contradict his views or contradict the Kremlin, then he will seize your assets. And I was like, Trump's not saying that.
Yeah, so I didn't sleep. Basically, we had a whole lot of both impact and air defense. So air defense, either way, it gets to be loud for everybody. I don't worry about me as much as I think about how everyone's Sunday. And throughout the day, two times during the day, we had visits with neighbors where the energy was just exhausted from staying up all night. And here, especially in the tower area where people are living in 18 to 25 floor buildings, drones, although I'm sure terrifying for people if they know that there's more than enough coming in, I don't see as a lot of movement for people going to shelters. When the big rockets come in, they know that can take out a building and you can see people move. So I am very much an OPSEC-oriented person about what is aired on the internet. There are people who already put out video of what was attributed to be an Oreshnik south of town. I can see it from my vantage point. What was going down had 6 munition bursts ahead of what looked to be the actual warhead, or what we would normally think of as the warhead. So, and they were going like this as they staggered down, rows of 6 and 6 stacks of these, preceding. So, on the ground level, I didn't see what I would expect from explosions like I have seen with like Iskander's, Ka-101s, etc. So, or Kinjals. I also noticed that there was some zircons launched in that batch last night. So, and you and I talked about that this would happen, but before we get to that, I actually want to hear about what happened in Dnipro, because this is sort of a back and forth you and I talked about on the phone earlier, is that it would be quiet here, loud there, quiet here. Yeah.
It is, as we alluded to, it's been really quiet last night, but, Russia has to stockpile. It's not got that arsenal and the capabilities to hit everywhere all of the time. I mean, they've still got to supply the front lines. They've still got to hit the targets on the front lines. It's been incredibly quiet over the last couple of days. I mean, it's been going on down south on the Oblast, Dnipro Oblast. So that's still going on. They're still fighting around Pokrovsk area. Can you believe it? That's been 2 years when they started the offensive there. Probably several months now, nearly a year since Putin said, invited all the journalists to come and see the downfall of Pokrovsk. lo and behold, 7 months later, it's still not falling. It's still fighting around there. It's still, as I said, it's not. They're not going to give it up. Not if it's killing lots and lots of Russians, which it's probably doing. So as long as it's benefiting Ukraine, then I'm kind of hoping that they hold on to it for as long as they can. But certainly, Putin doesn't control it. That's for sure. So they're still fighting down there. We've driven a lot of the Russians, I believe, out of Donetsk Oblast now, but still their drones come in quite far in. But as the city goes, a few drones over Pavlograd, and which is about 40 minutes from Dnipro city, the next one over. So very, very, very quiet. But I'm expecting within 3 or 4 days to get another hit here. That's for sure.
Well, also along the front, I put the report for us to use as a reference of some of the stuff that came in the general staff reports, which are essentially numbers along the front lines of how many skirmishes happened, attack overwhelms, etc. Kamikaze drones are a category that I've been monitoring in a lot of these reports, and it said on the night of 18th into 19th, 9,794 kamikaze drones in 24-hour period, the highest single-day figures of the war. No use of missiles that day, so.
It's uncanny what they hit as well. I mean, they hit the museums, they hit the ballet theatre school, they hit. I mean, I was struggling at one point to find a military target they actually hit. They hit the Chernobyl National Museum.
They hit the Mala Opera House that I filmed Oleg Skripka perform in last or 2 years ago in November 24th, 27th, 2024, after it had already been damaged, and this was part of repairing it from 2 other previous blasts that are in the same area. Also, you remember when we reopened McDonald's? There was the first McDonald's in Kyiv. That was this one in Lukyanivska. And that whole complex over there, that's a shopping complex, it's not uncommon to have those around town, and to see that place completely shattered across the entire complex is, it's beyond angry. I mean, I know these areas where defense work gets done, and it's nowhere near all these places that are being targeted and hit. So, fuck Russia.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is. It does draw the headlines, but it's certainly it isn't going Russia's way, and it hasn't been going for quite a while. So we've been talking about this. Just draws the you got to remember what this was actually for. It was reprisals, alleged reprisals.
Oh yeah, right. Retaliation for
for the allegedly hit the dormitories of the school in Lugansk, which they shouldn't be there in the first place. Let's remember that Russians shouldn't be in Lugansk anyway. So none of this. What we got to remember is none of this would have happened if Putin hadn't invaded in the first place. The dorm would still be there. I'd still have my home. Millions of other people would still have their homes. Nobody would have died. So all this blood that's being spilled is solely on Putin's hands. Even if I've got to say, because essentially, if there's a war crime, it should be investigated. But you can't just pick and choose which war crimes you want in. I mean, I've just seen them all on RT saying there's no British journalists here. There's no CNN. There's no BBC. There's nobody who wants to come and see the school. Yet this is the same people that's arrested journalists in absentia. These are the same people that have imprisoned journalists, murdered journalists, and now they want credibility from the very people they've tried to erase from Russian culture, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. It's bizarre that they seek approval from the BBC and CNN, when they've jailed and chastised and tried to erase them from Russian culture. I mean, just this year they've shut down all the Western social media platforms because they want to reduce the size of Putin's audience, and now they want approval from us. And then we haven't got to we not to mention the fact that they're advertising on their, for 15 to 17-year-olds to make Shahed drones in some of these places too, which is kind of muddying the water of, when you start using learning institutions to build drones, develop drones for the military, the military in some sort of capacity, then, it's fair game. If you want to bring kids in to build bombs, unfortunately, kids are going to get killed, aren't they, at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, for our viewers, here's what we had at us last night. So, the attacks, especially look at those positions coming from the north, where just across the border, the lead time coming in to hit us is not really all that much. And Telegram, I was pointing out that Telegram was kind of dragging ass last night when I was trying to get information real time. So you get to the point where you were using instinct. Additionally, I'm not sure if everyone can see the mouse in your position. I hope so. Shaun, can you? Mouse
I can't
movement?
see a mouse, no.
Okay, so that's good to know, so I'm not pointing out. So in the west over here, Zhytomyr, towards us, you kinda know where it is, towards, north of Khmelnytsky, you see that there's a missile attack that direction, right? Also down in the south central area of the country, you have them. I see that there was something that hit in your area of Dnipro on the map. Definitely attacks on Kharkiv. But again, you see the cluster that was going on, to, Kyiv hard, and from the multiple positions. So we got layers and layers of not only what was hitting us, but, launching, types. So anyway. Yeah, long night. Didn't sleep much, but, we're here. Fuck you, Russia. Fuck you, Russia. We're here.
Fuck you, Russia.
And to the trolls. Idi nahui, trolls.
Putin holo. Putin
holo. Hey, Shaun, so I posted this video earlier this week about, with the Babusi who were out there in front of my building. I don't know if you saw it here on this platform. Yeah. And,
I did, yeah.
God bless them, because they will say Putin huilo when there's no camera. And when they said, so I go, Putin. No, like they basically said in Ukrainian, nah, he's not so good. We don't think like he's never good or something. It's like, no, Putin huilo. No. Oh, on video. Okay, cool. So let's just do it this way. We did a video with that. But I thought it was funny because I know they do it. They started that when I'd walk by. It's like, Doboranko. Slava
They look trouble.
Oh, I love it.
Those two look they look like trouble, those two.
Exactly. So I'm not sure how many of those we can film around here, because I try to, leave people to their own devices, but these ladies are up to good mischief. They're good babosi. So anywho, so we went to an event. You want to go into this really I felt it was a very powerful moment to be at, with good people doing good work, and having you there. I turned around, and ladies and gentlemen, there was this British journalist to my side, and I think you have the video, so you'll have to post it.
The video. Okay. Well, literally left Dnipro. That's coming up on the train is dangerous in itself now, since Russians have escalated their terrorism, terrorist attacks, and they're hitting the trains. So a 6-hour journey up to business news. I'm former Ukrainian serviceman myself. I was captured in Mariupol, so thank you for your detailed brief. You, sir, my utmost respect. Totally relating to everything you're saying. My question is, what message could you give to the families of those who have volunteered for the Ukrainian military, who are currently held by the Russians? Those are Hayden Davis, James Anderson, Oscar Jenkins, people like that. Could you give the families a message of hope for them?
Yes. So But he doesn't say it in English, so I might have to pause it. We'll have it up there for the video for you.
Yeah, I did like
Shaun's account. Yeah.
So that was Lubinitz. So to get his official title. And he's really the Ukrainian ombudsman, which for those that don't know is the guy that does all the United Nations stuff, liaison person within the government. And he was holding a panel session which myself and Chris went to, and really we listened to some really horrific stories of testimonies from POWs, what's happening with POWs. Lots of distinguished guests there, from the embassies through to the UN had a representative there. Unfortunately, the ICRC never turned up.
And they were invited.
The Red Cross, and they were invited. Now, I understand their position, and I'm going to sort of read what I wrote today. I understand their humanitarian position, and I understand where they sit and why they probably felt that they shouldn't turn up. But I put basically, despite being invited, the POW conference made in Russia delivered to captivity held in Kyiv, they failed to attend. I understand the criteria and constraints of the Red Cross on what they operate under, as well as the humanitarian work it carries out globally. However, even if only in a symbolic nature, they're tasked with humanitarian responsibility and should be present at the events involving POWs, survivors, and especially their families. Because in the grand scheme of things, many so-called humanitarian organizations at the moment increasingly appear to be absent to the families, desperately searching for answers about loved ones held in Russian captivity. Simply being there would have mattered. Sometimes presence alone matters more than statements.
Amen.
Now, they should have been there in a placebo sort of way to talk to families. I don't see any problems with that. And them not being there is just another one of this. The article I wrote today about these people that should be doing things and saying things and condemning things aren't. Even the UN, when it was attacked by the Russians, are failing to even mention it's the Russians, and are failing to even.
The generic phrase, "Stop the killing."
Yeah, I mean, there's no, they're just being diplomatic or and they're being attacked by the Russians, which is kind of weird when there's no pressure being put on the Russians, especially since they're a UN, a founded, member of the UN, in the Security Council.
Right.
So it is kind of odd that we're not getting people turning up at these POW events that should be there, I feel. The UN can't even condemn Russia for bombing the UN convoys. And this is just escalating a lot of tension now, even to the point where the POWs, those, quite a few of them now are their respective countries of America, Britain, Australia. I named them in that question because I wanted people to hear that, that somebody's there asking somebody about what's going on with the prisoners. Now, I know he can't talk to me about, it's pointless asking him a question about, well, how, are you making any progress in prisoner exchanges? Because he's not going to tell me in any certain terms what's going on. However, I am a product of Ukraine. I am a product of being exchanged in one of those processes. I know it goes on. There's a lot of things that people don't generally know. Like, for one thing, if Russia doesn't want to exchange you, they don't have to.
That's right.
There's another thing. If they don't want you to visit them, the prisoners, they're not going to let you. There's not much the Red Cross can even do about it.
Mm-hmm.
however, this is just mounting up. And I think families should have a representative there. Even if they can't tell them everything, somebody should have been there just to show that there's, things are going on. But,
well, let me answer. Let me answer
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm going to go to that next, but because I have a video related to that for us here. But first.
And again, what do we achieve today? I cannot say what we will achieve today because this is not my.
But the event we announced today.
The events. I achieve the public informational campaign against the Russian system of tortures against Ukrainian POWs and civilian detainees. So I really believe that the international society can additionally push the Russian side to stop this cruelty and to change the system of violations against the rights of Ukrainian people. This is the first and main idea of our today's meeting and our today's project.
And average speakers around the world who are supporters, what do you think that they can do from home that helps us?
To talk about this, to talk about tortures, to talk about war crimes by Russian Federation, to talk about unlegal, unprovoked aggression by Russia against Ukraine and against Ukrainian people, to talk and to make additional acts. You mentioned about what can do people in the United States. They can call to the congressmen, people, to the decision makers, and to demand from these people, you must do something concrete for Ukrainian people, for Ukrainian army, to provide additional projects, assistance, military assistance, humanitarian assistance, to not simply talk about this. I apologize for my definition about problem. We don't have any problem. We have Russian aggression, Russian war against our country. So we are looking for additional support and assistance from the United States.
And more press.
Press, first of all.
He was, I give him credit. He was writing a lot of that in what he was saying. He was pushing on people to. There's too much, silence when it comes to POWs. There's, we've seen all the execution, the torture videos. One of the disturbing ones I just remember listening to was the barber. I remember getting my hair cut by a barber.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And getting it shaved off. And these guys nicking the tops of their scalps with the shaver, so they would bleed and they would scream and they would beat them for screaming. And they would come out of these haircuts with blood all over their face, and that set me back. That's why I was quite emotional when I was asking that question. I got a bit nervous and a bit emotional because I just sat there listening to this testimony, and it took me right back to that prison. And the guy sitting in front of me who's giving that testimony, still looks, reliving it looks a problem for him.
Alexander, the one who was on panel day before yesterday?
Yeah. It looks like it's difficult, and that comes with time. But, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, do the Brits, are they, it's clear Azov is their main problem. If you're Azov, you're going to in for a hard time if you're in captivity. I was Azov instructor for 2 years, but I don't think I got treated any different from many of the other guys. I was in the Scissor, which is a transit prison. I don't think I got treated any different. I got treated probably worse because they said I was a mercenary, they're terrorists. It's been like below spy. I mean, I thought spy was the worst you could get, but nope, Yomnik, mercenary, that was pretty bad. So, I wanted to ask him more questions, but you just don't get that time or the opportunity to really ask him, more questions with all those other journalists there. But, you're certainly not going to get any. I didn't want to ruin the one question I had with, can you give me any updates on where we stand of getting these Brits and Australians out of captivity? Because you're just going to get shut down. He's not going to talk to you about it. But I was quite interested in the words he said and chose, about hope and the, all the people there were the highest ranking people involved in exchanges. And when it comes down to, you can sign all the petitions you want, put pressure on your government at home, but there isn't going to be anybody better to get those guys out from an exchange than the actual Ukrainians, because they hold all the prisoners. They hold the key people that the Russians want. So what's the British government going to do to get the British POWs out when they're not even allowed in to visit them? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know where the short end video of this is, but I was at when the Red Cross headquarters was holding, or I should say the families were holding a protest in front of the Red Cross. And the leader here, it would take me too long to pan through for the about 3-minute interaction where I asked him, do you understand why the families feel like you're not there? And I told him later when I talked to him, I said, a lot of that is to do a favor to you. It's to show a room for you to get it right with people. All you have to do is show some consciousness. If you have people who were out there suffering, and I have no doubt the Red Cross cares. I've talked to them plenty. But it's I'll be honest, it was sort of how I would want to be talked to if I was in the same position making the same mistake. Does that make sense? Like if there was someone in the audience who had a microphone and that was me up there sounding like that, I would hope someone would go, "Do you understand why they're mad at you, sir?" I think so.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because there's a humanitarian law of rules, and they want to be impartial, so they can get to those.
Right.
I totally understand where that's coming. Where why probably they wouldn't turn up.
Right.
However, it's like you're trying to help them head off a problem that they're making themselves, which they could have stopped if they'd have just had a representative there. Might not have said anything, couldn't give any information out, but maybe could have said some bits, had a statement prepared to let families know that they're not forgotten and people are working for them. The Red Cross is involved in it.
Right.
But to not actually have anybody there, I thought was completely off. And that's hopefully my article today and our presence there highlighted that to a lot of people. I know certainly the organisers looked quite miffed that they hadn't turned up, despite being invited. So, and these are horror stories, these are really bad stories and testimony that we
when the guys were in the audience. Yeah, and when the guys were in the audience that didn't speak on stage reacted to videos up on the screen behind us, or I should say behind the panel, where we could see, they had been through some things to talk about later. And I reached out to those guys to stay in touch for future discussion. Also, I published no, real quick. I published a piece the day before with another defender who was in the audience, Dnipro, a call sign diplomat, about how it is partially to answer Paul's question here: how many POWs does Russia hold now? Truth is, we don't know that number because it's even on this side that number is disclosed real reticently. If the families have said of the Azov defenders of Mariupol at Azovstal that there's still 700 from that first 4-year ago mark in that unit. So you can sort of imagine, okay, well, if there's 700 there, there's at least, 300 to 400 maybe Marines and border guards, and then you start going to the other categories, and you start doing the numbers of who they haven't released. Plus, you have additional captures in the Kursk region, or be right back.
You're leaving me with everybody. No? Have you got a tax going on? It's always not doing it just to get the views up, honestly. As I fill in for a bit. So out of 800 prisoners that were interviewed, 95% of the prisoners said they were tortured in some way. Over 600 types of different torture were used on all these people, ranging from electrocution to manipulation to isolation cells to physically attacking them by way of stabbings, beatings. Sexual assault was quite high. I was absolutely shocked.
That was a stunning number.
Staggering number of sexual assaults. And this is huge systemic problem. Many of the cases very similar because it's just systemic. They're learning off the very guys that have done it before, so they're adopting the same techniques. And and that's where we sit with a lot of the torture that's going on at the moment. It was deeply sickening, to say the least, and that's why they're trying to raise the profile. Starvation being one of the ones that everybody sees now, because they're coming out, including myself, came out 60 kilos, where we're just not being fed. So everybody wants to know what's being done about it. The UN were there. They said they were acting on a lot of it and pinging a lot of it, which was good. I don't really want to go too much into detail with that. But it was horrendous, the amount of, what we've got to remember is
the story that about the soldier says, it's one thing what you do to me. I'm a soldier. I can take a lot. But when they said, well, here's your mom's phone number, here's your daughter's, and started going beyond that, where you feel powerless to protect people abroad. I know that
that happens quite a bit, actually. That they really want to work out who you are and who your family are. Maybe they could use you to maybe plant a car bomb, or maybe you've got someone that can manipulate to deliver goods to somewhere. So they're constantly on you to try and find out whether you've got anybody they could use. So they want to know who you are, and quite often or not, they will ring the families up and say, do this or we'll kill your son. It's as bad as that. Some of those stories of
my best buddy, who's a special forces guy who's been in since 2016, says, this is before the full-scale invasion. He says, they're particularly psychotic and do things like, they called one of his units family members and said, here's what the daughter was like 9, and said, here's what your daddy did at work today, and showed his dead body. And just to be mean, just to be cruel. And there was no gain in that. There's no intelligence gain in that. What are you getting?
No.
And so there's a whole bunch of stories of guys who've never met each other giving me variations of this type of behavior, otherwise known as a standard operating procedure.
Yeah, it is. It's systemic. And no, to answer to your question, just a dot. Unfortunately, no, I wasn't given any access to any humanitarian aid, Red Cross, UN. It wasn't allowed diplomatic or consulate visits. Received no visits from anybody apart from a Russian, a so-called Russian lawyer who never took a statement from us, never asked us for anything, provide any details, even though we could get them copies of our contracts, and they weren't interested in that. So no, we didn't see anybody for the whole time we was in captivity. And the only reason, I'll still say now, the only reason I'm alive today is because they wanted Viktor Medvedchuk and I had some value. Otherwise, I'd probably be dead, to be honest. I have no problem thinking they would have shot me, like they kept telling everybody. So I am quite lucky to be here. It was interesting. I've heard the guy say exactly the same things I said. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky to be here. He's not thankful for being exchanged, but he's grateful that he's still here. And it is a lot to do with luck, especially when he witnessed people who were killed, who was killed in captivity. So did I. God bless him, Paul Urey. a British NGO who was beaten to death, died of his injuries 2 days later while he was in captivity. So, it's very brave to get up on that stage. My story is well known, documented now, but yeah, enjoy is not the right word, but I'm always interested in other people's stories because, I'm sick of mine, to be honest. It's like I want to hear and write about other people's stories, to be fair.
I will say a photo I have of you and my friend Dmytro Kuyuk meant a lot because you're not only just two good friends, good peoples, but you're two journalists who were in captivity. And you both know uniquely what it was like to go through the Russian terror model. And yet you were standing in front of me, asking your questions, doing your job again. It's the fact that you were doing your job again that was like, yeah, because when he stood over in front of me, in front of Dmytro Lubinets at the end and kept asking more questions, or after your question, even when he was in the crowd asking a question next, I immediately went over with the gimbal and took that video. By the way, for our friends, the reason why they're not on the post yet is because I like to make the captions good for you. I wasn't finished yet. But you will. You'll see what was said. And having journalists in captivity is also one of the things that we're sort of addressing because the cruelty to civilians is also just off the charts, and what they do to hide their crimes. The point of the entire panel, and for the most part, was essentially made in Russia, war crimes, and looking at 600 plus types of torture that have taken place under the Russian Federation. And I've said this about war crimes with Russia for the last 4 years. I stood in front of the buildings that were destroyed as recent as this week and had them do it today. I just didn't go to the places because they were covered pretty well with my colleagues. Those are war crimes. But what we know happens in full occupation and captivity alone tells you who the Russians are. Because let's say how complicated it would be if everything in that side was above board and by the book. Difficult, but above board by the book. Occupied, but above board and by the book, right? It'd be a whole different emotional ball of wax to be plowing through. Still territory, still sovereign land, still sovereign people, all those other things. But the fact that the Russians can't fucking do that.
They've got no interest in doing it. That's one thing. I mean, we talk about this so often. You have to use, because nobody, the war fatigue is setting in. You have to use words like Nazi filtration camp to get people even interested now.
Right.
But essentially, that's what it is. So you've got. We talked about a Victory Day parade. The Victory Day parade that's, really remembering those who fought against the darkest chapters of German Nazi occupation and right while Russia's doing it. It's like, hold on a minute, I was in a black site. I was being electrocuted. Yep, I was starved. I ended up looking like I'd been in Belsen when I was exchanged. They are sexually abusing people. They killed a guy while I was in prison. Who beat him up so badly he died of his injuries 2 days later. They then didn't give me any due justice. They then give me the death penalty in a prefabricated trial. I mean, they're doing exactly the same stuff as the Nazis, and I sit there and lose my rag over it. And I when I go do interviews now, I have to tell people, it's like, they've got filtration camps. There were civilians in with me. Really? Okay, you still don't know. 4 years later, I was in an isolation cell with, a train driver from Mariupol. They were pulling everybody out, interning everybody that could possibly be Ukrainian, and torturing them. Not asking nice questions, but beating the daylights, electrocuting, cattle. Starvation, isolation, you name it. They were torturing people on a huge, like, industrial factory scale torture where they had.
They're doing this right now. They're bombing right now. They're not just leaving it alone. They're bombing right now.
Yeah, they'll probably follow up
in our area right now. They're bombing right now.
I haven't checked mine. They're probably following up on the stuff they didn't hit yesterday, or continuing that. So,
hey,
drones, reconnaissance drones coming in to have a look at the damage, and Shaheeds coming in again to probably hit places that they didn't feel that were hit, entirely correctly. Right. Like a kindergarten. Just finished that off, probably. Excuse me. I got Stella Artois tonight. I thought I'd have a.
I forgot my endorsement. I'm so sorry, friends. I need to make sure I'm clear. Everything is brought to you tonight by apple juice. Wonderful, complete, clear, wonderful for your time. Yablutchny Seek apple juice. Yablutchny Seek. Yablutchny. Say it with me. Yablutchny. Yablutchny Seek. It's fresh. Дуже свіже.
Будьмо.
But had a great hamburger with you the other day, but today I told you about an absolutely insane concoction called the banana burger. It was delicious.
I still can't get my head around that.
Oh, it's such a delicious concoction. I just had these ingredients on the shelf. I thought, why would I do it? But I'm in Kyiv. I'm trying to find if I have this. It's not in here. Oh, it's not in here. I really want to show that.
It astounded me today, though, that Staroblitz dormitory, and how much the journalists really pushing that dormitory that's been hit. It just astounded me today, the level of news that was surrounding that. This is the same country that hit the Kyiv Children's Cancer Hospital
exactly
2 years ago. And it's like, these poor children. Well, if you hadn't fucking invaded in the first place, none of this would have bloody happened. It's just ridiculous. The amount of PR that's, the propaganda that's going on at the moment. Since Russia's failing on the battlefield, I think it's going to get worse, Chris, to be fair.
Well, I think that you don't see anything coming out of Trump, so he's leaving things alone.
He's messed up Iran, I hear, really bad.
Oh yeah. So that's kind of been relatively good news for us. I think I want to address something though before we leave it about the World War II thing, because it's been interesting how many people tried to troll my 45,000 view post, which is not the most significant post of all time, but for me on the Instagram account, I gotten more traffic on that than something in a long time. Ukrainians across the board, like, oh, thank you so much for relaying what we go through. But the repeated effort to try to say it was Russia who won World War II, when that's not true. And by what calculus would you make that? Because, for instance, without Lend-Lease and without the two-front war with Britain and the United States on the Western Front, without the battles in North Africa, if you were to just dissect the Soviet Union and say, okay, well, let's say what Russia did versus what the rest of the nationalities who were beholden to the Russian Empire known as the Soviet Union, Russian Empire 2.0. The Russianness starts getting old after a while. It was a Ukrainian who planted the flag in the Bundestag at the defeat of the Nazis, so that wasn't a Russian either. And it's bullshit. It also masks 2 years of Russian involvement, specifically Russian involvement, because I tried to see how many Ukrainians were involved with the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact for 2 years, basically just saying, fuck off Europe, we're the empires now. So I don't really cry much of a river when they bomb my fucking neighborhood. Okay, so that was the end of my speech there. What do you want to talk about, Sean?
You just went off winging that, and I was just like, well, I don't know. We're going off script now. I was like, hold on a minute, I don't remember that.
I was right on script.
Yes, right on script.
I get people who are like, who are you to argue history? I'm like, the video is about bombing my fucking neighborhood and killing 24 people in my neighborhood, including my friend Ilya's girlfriend, Vera, who was just a young woman who was just starting her life, and her sister. So the fact that someone argue World War II history to me and be wrong, be wrong at the same fucking time, is really offensive. And I can't say what I would really do, or Instagram would immediately ban my account, because it would be something out of Reservoir Dogs or Walking Dead, one or the other.
Yeah, well, I don't know where to go with that. We're back to Walking Dead. How can I link that?
They bomb my neighborhood, bro. They bomb your neighborhood.
How can I link
Fuck
that
me.
into...
And also let's get back in your neighborhood for a minute, because when you got on train here, there was 19 casualties. I think there were severe injuries, but right, the bombing in Dnipro Wednesday night.
Yeah. I mean, it goes through spurts here. I mean, it's like we can get a couple of weeks without anything, and it goes for a week. We're on someone's radar. The drones have been you normally know, because you get those drones flying over 2 or 3 days. You know, the big main attraction's coming. I mean, I can't emphasize how scary it is with your family here. It really is. It's a different, when you're on the front, you have some sort of, it's just you. You don't really think about home. So you just get on with what you have to do every day. And I don't feel as much pressure on the front, as weird as that sounds, as I do when, I was telling you, when I came to yours, I went, thank God I'm here. Because if there's anything that happens here, I can climb up to the roof with you, and I'm not going to get my wife going, come downstairs, don't go up too high, don't get over the top, don't look out the window, stay away from the glass. And I'm like, I know a bit about what's going on, but it's nerves. It's sheer panic. And my wife doesn't want me to leave because there's an attack going on, and I want to get out and get some video and tell the world what's going on. So we have to balance that out. But with me and you, we're like flying up the top of the stairs, having a good old nose, going, what's happening here then?
You saw where I live, so you saw the view. It's pretty much the top view of the
and it doesn't stop there, because when you get a shot of the dreams, you can't post it anymore. You can't just put it online. Because
for me, it's. I think, for instance, last night, seeing how the missiles are deployed helps me understanding both what is incoming and also how our guys fight back. How important it is to get the air defense together, because I get to see when there's not enough.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I literally was filming an attack. Drones were coming into Dnipro, and it was when the first interceptors were up. And you get used to battlefield sounds. You get used to the air defense. You used to get the pattern that's coming around. You know when they're going to fire, when they're going to come in, and the drones come in, and the air defense kicks off. And you see, get used to it. And then suddenly this week went, this jet drone come from the ground all the way.
That was the sound I heard a minute ago, and I don't know what was changing out there, but there was that jet sound was what was going on outside.
What's that? I've not seen one before, and I'm thinking, I got it on film, and I'm thinking, I can't send it. I can't put it out. I can't tell anybody. Not that I want to, because I don't want the Russians to know what we've got and how many we've got. And so you've always got that conscious that if I put something out, am I giving something away? Am I giving a position away? Not to mention my own. You've got to wipe all the data off the picture and make sure there's no geolocations in it that will give yourself away where you might be sitting. So it's really fucking hard
doing news in this is a difficulty. Doing news in this is a difficulty when it comes to certain inherent opposite instincts. And one of them back in Twitter Spaces discussion land a couple of years back, when people were arguing about what was being supplied to Ukraine from the United States, we passed the constant discussion of Abrams and Bradleys. And I knew guys here who preferred Bradleys over Abrams for usage. Also had experience using basically the Soviet tanks more. So when it came to fixing things, it was a lot more instinctive to go to the old school. And someone said there were no Bradleys coming in, and I had just seen Bradleys within less than 5 days of that, being in a delivery, posse going, towards the front. And I just said nothing because they didn't need to know. There was no one in that discussion that needed to know that a batch of Bradleys had just gone right by me.
Yeah,
What
and the
would the
only
benefit
people
have
that
been, right?
would be interested would be the Russians. What's the
Right.
point?
Let the Russians find out the hard way that there are some new Bradleys down at the front.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got
You have to be
really
really
upset that there was
careful.
so much discussion of exactly who, what on our side is doing what, who, what, where. So a very well seasoned, and this is one thing I'd like to hear from you, a very well seasoned American here, that had been here since 2018. I would assume does more intelligence based work than other things. From what I can read, it doesn't give me quite his skill set, but he was really annoyed with all his discussion centers. He would listen to them, including a few that were online, and he shot down a few of them just flat out. He goes, "Yeah, why don't you just go and give him my social security number while you're at it, since I'm fighting the war? Why don't you?" And he just went down all the rabbit holes of information that, so long as we're OSINTing, and then he stops. He goes, "Well, I'm just kind of glad they're wrong most of the time." And we went on about having our dinner. It was epic. I was like, "Wow, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thanks for being a little bit wrong out there."
You need to go out and do these shoots in Dnipro where the missile hits, and then you need to get out there and film yourself in front of the site of the house. And I went, I'm not that sort of journalist. I don't mind including that in a piece and doing some video footage of it, but to sit there going, I'm at a site where there's just been bombed, and that's not what. I'm more of a strategic, of what's going on. I want to have a look at, how the piece together how the propaganda's working. Like now with, since, unless you bring up the fact that the Children's Cancer Hospital in Kyiv was bombed, 2 years ago, and piecing that together with the Kramatorsk train massacre, where the Russians bombed refugees trying to escape the area, and Dnipro apartment block that killed 40 people, when it collapsed because of, a Russian missile went plowing straight into it. Then you see one incident in 4 years that's got high profile where a dormitory has been hit in Lugansk, an area where Russians shouldn't be anyway, is now here. To get such media attention from Russia on platforms is shocking, considering 4 years we've had atrocity, Bucha, Irpin, Izium. I mean, we can just go on all day with massacres and atrocities. Mariupol, 25,000 there, including women and children, predominantly Russian speakers.
This is me in your hometown, wherever the focus point is. But anyway, this is me in your hometown when that
can't see it. You need to get
can't get closer. I want autofocus anyway, but that was the building that was blasted out in Dnipro on January 14th. I've been to the ones there, Odessa, Vinica, Saltivka, and the way in which Russia just fires into civilian areas over and over again, only to have outside investigators go, well, let's see the trajectory. Was it a war crime or not? Mostly you'll see that the outside dignitaries quickly go, what the fuck? Like they did that here. They met a lot of, international dignitaries spoke up today finally to say, hey, this is terrible. This war crime shit.
I saw that today. Yeah. For the first time, we got one after the other come in saying, this is fucking wrong. But it's taken, us to write articles, to go into the media, to say everybody's not saying anything, to now having what we should have is blowback for these attacks that have happened, because it's not retaliation. I said he's making war on Ukrainian civilians and calling it defense of all things. I know, as retribution for hitting a dormitory, I'm going to attack the ballet theatre school. I'm going to attack the Chernobyl Museum. I'm going to attack 6 dozen apartment blocks. That's just ludicrous. It's you've been doing that anyway. This is not retaliation. This is an attack that happened regardless. You were going to do it anyway. You just gotta. You're just managing the system. You know, you're essentially. You're just changing the parameters of what you were going to do anyway to suit the.
Exactly.
We're gonna beef up and we're gonna retaliate. No, you were gonna do it anyway. It's not retaliation. You did exactly. You fired Oreshniks before. You've fired zircons before. You've fired drones every day of the week, and you attack installation. You attack civilian infrastructure. You attack apartment blocks. Unless you've got someone like me or you who's here every day of the week, putting that all together, sticking it out into papers, commentating on it. I haven't seen one article similar to, or anywhere near similar, piecing together Russia's ability to employ 15 to 17-year-olds to build drones. They've gone out there and they've advertised it. The Russians are employing kids to build the fucking drones.
Right.
That doesn't give you license or carte blanche to attack every university and attack every dormitory. But what it does tell you is that the Russians are not entirely telling you the whole truth and murky the lines a lot. So the chances are the Ukrainians probably could have hit a drone, university, a teaching place where they're training kids to build and attack drones. You could have quite feasibly got the university in Ukraine.
Well, the Alabuga attack a year ago was that. It was Alabuga was clearly a location where drone facilities were reproducing the Garand parts, and it becomes a legitimate target, which is why I tell all Westerners, and I don't care if they get butthurt when I say this, if you're involved in drone making, shut the fuck up.
You're involved in drone making. You're a target, essentially.
Yeah. So I don't need to know where you live. I don't need to know what you do. Just saying, if you're anything to do with remember the people around you. I don't care how bravado you are. It's everyone else. A couple things to people who are saying such nice things. Glad you're both okay. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Truly, for everyone who messages also during this. Cheryl says, hello, Chris. Worried about you during last attack. Also worry about, and I show you, everyone does this with me. It's the people around me. Watching people go through that, knowing that layers and layers of people getting no sleep, stressed. If they're disabled, they have to do it while disabled. I can say I won't say their names, but friends of mine had their apartments severely damaged from the blast. So they spent today putting all that stuff back together. Paul said, and this is, I think, a very good point. I wouldn't be able to stand and film that shit. I'm more of a hands-on person. I probably started helping search and rescue.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Now, this all sounds good, but I can tell you, the search and rescue teams here are extremely, extremely pro, meaning like even average, community labor is almost not even required when it comes to the teams I see here. They have a full-blown security protocol down for everyone involved in the work. And in fact, at the last one that I was filming, where it was, a little over a week ago, right, in Kharkivska metro area, one of the big supersized heavy chains that was coming down to grab the concrete slabs did not quite fasten, and when it let go, they snapped back forward and just barely swiped past one of the guy's noses. I mean, it would have been a severe concussion, perhaps broken cheekbone at the weight of those things going like that, right? And then they're whipping around because of the amount of weight. But everyone there knows the skill set that an average person could have easily been hurt, trying to do good work. And so just being clear on that. And I think that Paul's instinct, we're the same about that. Like, not related to this situation where I've had to, maybe there's a list of things, but I'm not thinking of them. But in Rex and Houston, I would always go up and try to find everything I could do to help the person involved in it instead of, I wouldn't even think to pull out a phone,
No, me too. I'm the same.
People,
I can do it.
Help
I can
instantly.
do it, especially close to the scene. I was weirdly, I think I've always been the same. I was at the Shankill bomb in Northern Ireland back in the early
Oh,
90s. And literally, I was QRF, and it was my first real task. And I went out to the Shankill Bob to man the cordons, and I got my camera ready. And when I got there, I was so close after the explosion that I just put my camera away and just went, "Not now, boys," and mucked in with trying to get through the rubber. The Shankill bomb went off. So I've always been on that. And now I help with Prevail as well. Their boys were out last night in the EOD teams were out last night in with the explosives in Kyiv. So one of them got injured, so he's okay. Today he got hit with some shrapnel while they were working out there. So he got blood all over his jeans. He was moaning this morning because he was helping an old lady who got hit as well. And so yeah, I mean, it was just everyone mucked in last night, I think, except for me. I was just sitting there, in the quiet, just making sure everybody was all right this morning.
Well, I'm thankful you're okay.
Yeah, we get our turn.
Not looking to spread the doom and gloom around the nation.
No. We get our turn all the time. I've put enough videos up in Dnipro of us down in the basement with Loki.
One video that stood out was the attack near the metro, that the blast was so intense that the ceiling, basically it's like a stucco layer, if you will, I guess, was coming down, and they were really afraid that it wasn't thick enough there to handle the impact. Number two,
a metro. I mean, it's like
they're pretty good underground.
Fucking military sites. They're not military sites. You know what I mean? It's a fucking metro.
Right. And let's be clear, because I'm sure the Russians are dumb enough to know a lot of things, but they seem to not know this. The important leadership of Ukraine is well down in bunkers under Kiev's main hills. That if you're down in Podil, you're at ground level. There's a whole lot of areas you're at ground level. Like, I happen to live in a tall building, but my street level is pretty much ground level. But that area is not. It is really, really high up there. And if you don't believe me, try walking from ground level up that, and you won't think you are at first, but you're kind of getting winded because it's kind of an incline. And then ask yourself to burrow straight down 400, 500 feet into the earth, and tell me which missile magically takes out that leadership. None. And the Russians know this.
It didn't stop them today saying that they're taking out Sersky. I mean, we've had
exactly.
all the top leadership I've seen taken out in Ukraine. I mean, it comes out on X and the minute after these attacks happen,
Yeah.
It's, the propaganda thing sort of kicks in.
But their propaganda models, that's what made me bring it up, is that when I watched, Solovyev's little idiot panel, the Kabuki theater that it is, there are things that get said in there that are important to at least pay attention that it did get said or did get brought up, and I always really try to warn Americans, understand the use of canned opposition, the appearance of the flex of criticizing a bad policy, because that's in the design. They already know this.
Look at Tucker Carlson gets it. Look, we've got a Ukrainian now. She's going to talk about Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson. He is such an idiot.
and she's got a book out. Really?
Right.
There we go. That's why.
So, real quick, I'm going to show a little bit. I think our audience can catch this. But in these attacks, this is a year ago in our neighborhood. The attacks that happened today all pretty much look like this, where for blocks and blocks, the cluster munitions, like this one was about 6 blocks by 7 blocks deep. You can see, like, I'm panning one position, right? I go all the way down there at the top of that building, and I pivot back this other direction. There we go. And I'm like, where in the hell does this stop? As far as I can see, 5 or so blocks deep on the other side, perpendicular from our position, walking straight forward. rescue workers. Also, the buildings. Notice in the upper right-hand side, a lot of these places have residents that are watching from places that had just been bombed directly across the street. This is once I start getting inside the layers inside this compound area.
And those blast radiuses they're so loud. It's so loud and gets so hot, and especially even the shaheeds when they come down. The electronic countermeasures takes them, maybe interferes, and they just go plowing into buildings that probably weren't a target sometimes, and you never know where they're going to go. They just come flying down.
But this is all one event. What I'm filming here, this is like 5 blocks by 5 or 6 blocks squared. This guy's trying to leave because there's a second potential tap on the way. So you see this building, what is now the center, right? It's very far in the distance, yeah? I mean, that's where I started with some of the flattened cars way back on one side. That's how far deep the attack site for this example. This is a lot like what happened yesterday.
And they double tap it, don't they? That's the problem now. They wait for the first
responders.
Yeah.
And by the way, for the record, someone said I was afraid to go to the front, saw the video of me filming in the double tap zone. They go, "You're not exactly panicking or running." I go, "No."
Oh, I get it.
I wouldn't be here doing my job if I was.
When somebody says you're afraid to go to the front, I said, damn right, anybody should be, to be fair. You should be afraid to go to the front. That's courage.
Yeah, there's what I call reasonable. Yeah, reasonable fears are one thing.
You should be scared.
It's sort of like the fear of doing the job is not a thing. It's let's actually address this for a minute because you're here, especially. There we go. Okay. Journalism costs money. People don't you just came here. I'm glad you got to take the train up, be part of the panel with Lubinets, hang out for a bit, then get back on train and go back. You're lucky, that you have friends, not just here in another part of the country that like you. So people like you and me maybe get lucky if someone will let us stay somewhere.
Yeah. You have to budget in.
But you have to budget this stuff in, and it keeps us from really taking the vision where we really see a story that must be told, and it's required to do so. So to the viewers, if you have not already subscribed to Shaun's account, and I'm sure you are because you probably think he's cooler than I am. Anyway, that's why you're here. You don't even know who I am. I'm Chris and Kia, the other guy. But Shaun's great, and having him paid to do journalism is great. Seeing you at the media event the other day doing work is, I love it. And I want people to believe in it.
While you're talking about that, do you know what I did? As soon as you sent me the videos, I sent it to one of the dads to say that, there we go. We were asking questions about your son. This was the answer.
Right on.
Chris translated it. I'm able to send it to his dad and say, you might feel that nobody's working, but, we're asking the questions. We're pushing the agenda.
Right.
We're at these meetings. That is vital. That's what the Red Cross should be doing, to talking to these dads and families. This is what, those who have contributed just to Voices to the Front have enabled me to do, to get to this point where we're now taking Russia to court. We're now going to meetings. Me and you are going to meetings. We're putting a documentary together. We're doing other stuff that then helps people like, one of the POW's dad to get through his next phase, because it's probably going up and down and feels like nobody's actually doing anything to try and get his son out, and that's not the case. So it's really important, some of the stuff we do some of the stuff we do that it really doesn't, nobody hears about it. Nobody will ever hear about it, but that thanks to you guys who contribute to our Substack as paid subscribers. You really enable us to be able to do that. Maybe we're at fault for not telling you enough that's what we do, but
we are.
It's all part of it, getting
and also I'll tell you,
magazine.
I know we don't have our little focus going on here, but you got to be there the other day when we showed up at the museum to see me hug a dear mom who was always at our rallies, being one patient in her own suffering, waiting for her son to be returned. But, just a center, like a pillar. There are certain wives and moms that are just extraordinary, and that I know. All of them are special, by the way, just for the record. But we count on some to do things, and she was there at the front, and you were there. And I was like, "Come here, mama. I'll give you a big old hug."
I was going through my own emotion, actually. There was a woman there who said, I know
That's
you.
right. Yulia, right?
Yeah. And I was like, do you? And she went, yeah, I was you were at this place, staying at this place, back in Mariupol in 2018. And I was with you at the same place. And holy shit, yeah, you were. She said, I was a little younger then. I was like, holy shit, that was like 7 years ago. It was like amazing to see friends as well. I hadn't seen, for a long time, and lost contact with. And so, getting around this, getting around these places, it does cost money. We have to budget in, but we've got a place in Dnipro now where Chris comes down here, and I go up there to Kyiv, and together we sort of muddle through and get this done. So it's great. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your 60, 70 people tonight live. That's pretty good for podcasts.
Yeah.
The updates weekly, and we're still new at this, getting all our what do you call it, production to a new level. Now we've got a base, so that's cool.
That's right. And we have been talking about ways to expand it. So I reached out to some of the people involved in organizing the event day before yesterday, some of which already knew me. I just had to be more direct, more formal, and even more so is ask for the resources domestically. State what I want to really see happen, and then put the faith not just in the people in front of me, but into the project that's around us. And I'm going to say this, Shaun. We've been enjoying that. I've been teasing them with the mystery guest that I think only you in the whole space know who mystery guest is. That's not related to our work in Ukraine. He's rather special. Anyway,
I'm not sure they'll get that.
But there's a point to it. There's a point to some of the choices in this, and I did one the other day. Odessa's under attack. I did one yesterday with a master drummer that inspired me to learn the ones that are behind me. And all of these interviews have one thing in common: is to do what you most believe in, and then have faith in what you do. So much so that nothing really stops you from getting into that. Someone will get it, others will not. And the way you and I like to do the news, there's a lot of traffic of information that flies all week long in all the Kyiv Post and, Kyiv Independent, great sources. I like what they do collectively. I value them being on the task. But you and I were at an event where who were the other English-speaking competitors in press? Nobody.
Yeah. It was all Ukrainians. It was quite sad.
We do exactly. We do what we do because we believe in it. That's a big part of it. And frankly, we do it well because we believe in it. Can we do it better? We do it better when we have better resources. And then once the resources kick in, and also when we own it, anyway, we believe we are the ones that are supposed to do this. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ancient Chinese secret, huh? And do something with it. It's really something that I wouldn't be able to do without the audience. If you guys weren't caring about the questions like you asked, what can you do to help? I hope I could bear witness from the video you saw earlier. I literally asked your question directly to the person that I've been wanting to talk to. I didn't even ask my questions. I have a whole bunch of questions for him later. I asked your question because you count. Thank you to our viewers. Good night, everybody. No, I'm kidding. We're not done yet. But yeah, seriously, I want us to realize that you can have, as viewers and supporters, an access to some of the most important history in front of us this way.
It's going to get more as well, isn't it? It's going to get, we got some great interviews lined up, hopefully next week. We got some we'll be doing a lot more of those press engagements, the front end, so you can know what's going on, and hopefully some trips down close to the front lines, especially places like Zap and places like that, and go and interview some people and friends down there and see what's going on, and some old faces too. So now I've got my press credentials. It just takes a bit of time to get these meetings formed, and you've had yours since forever, but now I've got mine. We can get some bits done, which I'm really looking forward.
It's always on a hip, ready to go. I'm sitting here in work shorts. I'm in work shorts instead of fancy stuff. No Armani's for tonight. And yet right on the side is the pocket that always keeps the press badge. Have that first and foremost. When is the secret interview? The secret interview is coming soon.
Can you give us another clue?
That's pretty good, actually.
I really just did give you another clue.
Let's just say it this way, Shaun. I think that the reason why I'm doing some of these may seem very esoteric, but I believe these are contributors to a better culture, a wider kind of growth in society at different times. And so I get lucky that I can either know them or reach out and have a conversation. And I do a lot of like heavy, serious news. So it's kind of good to take something. They go, hey, I'm going to just reach out and do that. And I'll say even more so, I just actually took the initiative to do so and got a yes. And I think that matters. And there's a couple of others that are coming that if they happen, they'll be a big deal for me. Like, I literally went to the top names on my list. Go, well, why not? And I wrote, and I got a yes. Yeah. So
yeah.
Next step, we'll interview Budanov and some of those guys. But let me think. I'll do a little guess for our crowd tonight. And I said that paid contributors are allowed to message me in DM and say, hey, I have a bunch of questions. So on the timeline, you can ask questions. What's a good? Okay. It's in the area of film. I'll make it easier. It's not. By the way, again, it's not Ukrainian. So, although it was aired here in October 2024, and it's let's see. There's a particular thing about it. I'm gonna leave it right there. Now we're in the area of film, so that locks off a whole bunch of stuff.
You could do a connection. There's a connection to Home Alone.
Right.
That's so bland. They're never gonna get that. The connection.
It's definitely outlasted most films that could have been. There's a lot of films that have been forgotten if you don't mention them. It's also approximately 1 year and 5 months ahead of Star Wars.
You actually worked that out, did you?
There's your trivia question tonight, and then tomorrow or whenever I next come onto camera, it'll be good. But
I love that.
But we have back to a couple things about you and I working on some things. I talked to the young people that were doing the EU. Ukraine is EU.
Yeah.
And sent them the video of the rally that they had here on Europe Day. But also, I discussed whether our viewing audience here would like to have essentially an English-speaking text panel. Like, we would just set up a bunch of cameras, have our friends inside like a restaurant area or somewhere we could easily just have mic passed around, and all of you wonderful viewers could ask questions of Ukrainian people here, and I can use a tablet to see what the questions are easily. So yeah,
we could tie that into a larger event. Actually, that'd be pretty.
Would you get audience people to like these things?
I love it. Somebody put, at last you have your press credentials faster from a country at war than you did get your visa from the US. Yeah, absolutely. It was like, what was it, 14 months to get my US visa?
Right.
I'm not even sure I'll probably get in through Homeland Security.
Cheryl says, is there anything you need? I can get it there. Yes, hard drives. More video hard drives. My God, I'm running out. I thought it was fine, and I looked at it today, and it's like 286 on one drive, 311 on the other. It's like,
a good chicken curry.
Oh, please. Yeah. Actually, I was on the phone with my interview that will come up. I'll be putting an interview up here the next few days with master tambourine and frame drum guru himself, Glenn Velez, who like synthesized all of them. But what I didn't ask him in the interview, because it would just be out of awkward, is like, man, when are we going to meet up at Spanish Flower and have chicken mole? Because I miss my authentic food from Houston.
I do miss
like we have, certain foods. Yeah, I just can't get it right here in Kyiv. No offense to my wonderful Ukrainian friends.
No, there's some things that you do miss from home, and good curries. You just you can in Kyiv. There's some places, but they're remotely. You can't get it in Dnipro. But
so I was asking if I have access to hard drives here. So the problem with the hard drives here is that they only seem to ever go up to about 2 gigs. So getting the Western Digital 5 gigs that I always use, which are better for what I do, is really a pain. And actually, they wind up being the price. A 2 gig drive here in Ukraine is about the same price as a 5 gig drive on Amazon or B&H in America. So what I typically do is get, some of the contributors who want to do one in America as a way of supporting it, literally an archive of historical video, both the news information that's being gathered and the actualities, as we call them, and then also the culture whenever I capture any number of things that are culture, including serious events. It's not always just like music things. It could be, I've captured Easters and, serious memorial level holidays, if you will. And, hard drives count. So, they're about 119, and we could never have too many of them. If I literally had a stack of 4 or 5 extra, because people all just got way too generous, there's no crime in that, because we would make sure that things got filmed instead of what we actually do, which was maybe I don't need to film that since I already have that, or maybe, you start holding back. So just to be honest with everybody, that's how it works. Richard says, I buy 500 gig drives rather cheaply. Yeah, the problem is I would be out of space no time. I have 9 5 terabyte drives, and they are mostly full.
Fish and chips from the chippy. Yeah.
Oh, fish and chips.
No such thing. Yeah, it's like fries, and it does not the same. And then you got the issue in Ukraine. One of the biggest things my pet hate in Ukraine is when they bring the food out one at a time. I just don't get it. I don't get everywhere you go. And then somebody comes up to you and says, "Would you like the meals out together?" Yes, of course. I'm with my wife. Why do we
Razum.
I don't get it. There's this Ukraine thing out here. I don't get why we get one meal, the chips, then she gets the burger, then I may get my burger, and then she gets the chips.
With a glove.
With the glove. Yeah, with the black glove.
Burger glove.
Burger glove. I just don't
How many people in the audience have never heard of a burger glove or ever experienced a burger glove? I'm just kind of curious.
I didn't really till I got here. But to be honest, this is a laughing joke. When I was in captivity, I went to Milton Keynes shortly after I was released. And when I went there was all these things like delivering food and stuff, all these little robots going around this little city. And I got back and I turned to my mum and went, how long have I been captive for? I feel like Buck Rogers. It was like all these,
oh God.
I feel like these robots were just flying around everywhere, this city centre. And I was like, I don't remember Milton Keynes being like, it's just like, he's like, well, we've got them in Estonia too, this guy said. I went, really? I said, it feels like I've been away for like millennium, like 2,000 years or something, and I've got Buck Rogers Back to the Future.
Honestly, actually, let me ask you about that, because I've been very blessed to talk to guys who come back as it's, for me, having worked on it, it feels like super deep to be able to talk to someone I just made posters about and stood by their family members, right? It's a lot that we have this back and forth, but I always try to remember when I'm speaking, you're relearning your life. You're catching up on what you simply did not even know was happening in this world. So if I come bubbling at you with, oh, this happened, that happened, and so I know not to do. I know not to do that, right? But what are your thoughts on that for our audience too? Yeah.
When you're captured, you're essentially, you remember the way the world was the minute you get incarcerated, when you're in captivity. And some of these guys have been in for 4 years, but when they're released, the moment they left is what they remember. They don't know anything else because they've had filtered news, and the Russians would have kept information from them. As far as they know, the Russians would have been winning and dominating. They wouldn't have had much knowledge of the outside world, especially with families, and things change. When I was in, the Queen died, we had a king come along. We went through 2 prime ministers. We had Boris Johnson, and then we had Liz Truss, and then some guy called Itchy Ballsack, Richie Sunak. So I just haven't, when you're in captivity, somebody's going, you've got another new prime minister, and you're going, oh, for fuck's, what the hell's going back on in England, for God's sake? We're all going to die here just because they're ignorant. We got 3 prime ministers in the space of 3 months. So you are coming back. You get bits of news, but you are coming back to a world where it's where you left it. And some of these guys have 4 years, so family members would have died, and villages would have been bombed and stripped, and disintegrated, and the lines would have moved. And so one guy I know, his wife left him while he was in captivity, went off with somebody else. Imagine coming out thinking you got a wife, and she's already shacked up with somebody else. I mean, it's like,
and here's a more complicated. What are the Marine brothers? That she's taking the army money that was meant to be paid because of him, and building her new life with the other guy.
Another guy, yeah. Well, that happened to a colleague of mine. Yeah. She'd got off with, met somebody else, and was taking the army pay to build a life with another army soldier. I mean, it's just, imagine coming out to that, and then you've got all the problems of trauma and dealing with. You've not processed Mariupol, and that was 4 years ago. Some guys are never going to leave that place before you even get into the captivity.
You get out now, and Trump is president. He's launched a war with Iran. He's giving the world to Putin at every turn. I did have a friend.
You went in, the Americans were the good guys. You come out down to the bad.
Well, that is true for a Marine buddy of mine who's really open with me. He's also a good commander energy. I'm not sure how high up in the commander rank he is with his guys, but I can tell they all look at him as a young commander. And he asks me those things because he says, I came out, and this was last August release, August 14th, with Artur and Vladislav release. And he says, man, like, Trump is back? Like, really?
Yeah.
Because, and he knew about like Jan 6. He wasn't really worried about Jan 6, but he says that's why he thought it was crazy. But he knew that Trump was not friend of Ukraine in round 1. So that's why.
Yeah, I've said it all the way through. I was interested at the POW conference where we asked somebody, I didn't quite catch the answer, but I'm suspecting that the 205 that were recently exchanged were nothing to do with the 1,000 that Trump said he was, assured that the ceasefire would bring. Where are the 1,000 prisoners of war that we were promised on the exchange that Trump took ownership of? I mean, it's just, where's that? When's that going to happen? It's just not happened.
Anything I want to lose, I'm just going to ask Trump to go negotiate it for me.
Not just lose, but aim.
If you ever want to break up with someone, say, I want Donald Trump to go save my relationship. And it's guaranteed that relationship will be over.
I'm not going to get into that, because I'm just going to get so wound up with Trump, talking about Trump now. And, I always tell people, Putin started the biggest land war in Europe since World War II. 6 million forced refugees internally displaced just in Ukraine. Another 4 or 5 million left. 1.3 million of his own countrymen either red-misted or going home with a limp. Yet Trump seems to get the 99% of the headlines, whatever happens. It's wrong at every level. Do you know what I mean? There should be so much pressure through the media on Putin.
I hate to break into a rant about this, but when it comes to who won World War II, the Russians bombed my fucking neighborhood this last week. So that's
did they? Oh shit! Yeah,
that's what I think about who won fucking World War II.
Still so
you know, here's the thing I think is important in the article I wrote about it, which is that you and I live in Ukraine. We know there are markers that say 41 to 45, but there's no equivalent of this shitty victory parade here. The day before is the day of remembrance of the defeat of the Nazis, essentially. It's a solemn day. It is not a run up and down the street. We're the biggest badasses on the block. Compensation through nationalism, Russian, small dick day,
Yeah.
That's the story. I'm sticking to it. Oh, by the way, everybody, I got to show you something really good that arrived this week. It took its time, but I'm glad I have it.
Hey,
it's
good.
It's a wonderful, wonderful friend's gift to the library, and I will be reading everything in it very shortly. But it's great to work with you, my man, and I hope our friends are signing up for subscriptions, and go further, please. If you can afford a paid subscription to our friend Sean's great work, let me know. I did, and I'm poor.
I've got to return a favor, actually, and I'm poor.
So if I can do it, everyone else can do it.
Yeah, we're going to keep going. Keep plugging away. Yeah, I'm going to turn in. It's 10:30.
Yeah, so this is our Sunday night briefing, and I know sometimes we want to do things on Friday, but we were busy on Friday. He actually literally finished the briefing, got back on the train after eating a burger, and was gone. And I went into traditional good Ukrainian mode. Oh, I understand you're leaving. Well, this is good. I have made sure you're fed. So good.
It was scary because you were right. You were typical Ukrainian. When I told you about the woman, the babushka that carries the heavy the heavy suitcases, who fell back on the escalators at Kyiv train station.
Yeah.
Oh my god! And then I was there with 15 minutes to get my train, stuck on that escalator.
Yeah.
It was quite large, in the middle, can't get in, can't get out, because this woman's fell, about 3 feet down the escalators with a heavy suitcase. I couldn't get to her because there was like 2 or 3 people in front of me. Oh my God, it was awful to watch. And all I could think about was hopping over the side of the escalator to get my train. If I missed it, I'd have been screwed, because it's a 6-hour train back to Dnipro. So, I knew I texted you, I know you went, well, I fed you. That's all it counts. It's like your typical babushka. It's like, well, it wasn't you, and you've got, I fed you. So,
you're well fed. It means something to make sure that you are, Our Charmistan was shut. Arcadian says, tell us about the Happy Days tattoo. I saw a picture that you have posted for the past. I think almost they had the same tattoo.
Listen, we've got a few of us got the same tattoo in Moldova before coming across back into Ukraine, and some of us have been to Syria, and some of us have worked as snipers, and we were going back in as sniper instructors. So that, it's more than that now. There's about 3 of us got it on in Moldova. Then we got some more. Aidan got one about 6 months later. And then a few Americans got copied it. It's sort of caught on. A couple of the Azov guys got it. And unfortunately, out of 8 of us who got the tattoos, 3 of us were actually captured. Don't ever get captured with your mates with all the same tattoo. You can't get out of it. You all
kind of hard to talk out of the unity of that.
You're not going to talk your way out of that. So just one bit of advice: if anyone says let's get matching tattoos, just say no. So literally, and it came about because if you just salute in where we were, you could salute. It showed Happy Days, and also if you're firing your weapon, you got it on the ticket. Yeah, it's like happy. It's more like sort of dark humor, and that's where it came. Ammo box stencil and the Happy Days tattoo. But it wasn't happy when you have Russians for several months go, oh, You happy? No.
No, fucking blitz.
No, I wish I'd never got this tattoo. You know, but now it's become quite a cult piece with other people getting it. And, some Marines have got. I know 2 Marines have got their tattoo now. When they got out, the first thing they did was say, "I want your tattoo." So they came out and got their tattoo. So there's quite a few of us now with the same stamp for just being in captivity and doing what we were doing. So yeah, it's quite nice to set a trend. And it'll stay with. I'm going to get some Ukrainian tattoos around it. I haven't got the Ukrainian tattoo yet, but I desperately want to get some Ukrainian tattoos because the pattern. I love the patterns. You can get them in tattoo form, and they look amazing.
Right.
Actually, on some of those.
I saw, because this week was National Vyshyvanka Day on Thursday. I saw
it was
one soldier's like. This guy's, I'll send you the photo. It was out of Telegram, one of the ZSU official accounts. Like pure camo, like tactical ranger suit, but Vyshyvanka so perfectly woven into here. I went, that's the coolest thing I have ever seen in my life. It really was. The way it perfectly blended in with everything else. I'm sure, like, imagine our entire nation's, armed forces being able to wear that every day. Because there's no way. I mean, most of my guys that are friends in this forces, theirs look like army clothes. They're army clothes. There's nothing extraordinary outside of their army clothes. That alone is an honor. This was army clothes with perfect army Vyshyvanka woven, and some of my Marine friends have Marine Vyshyvankas. The 36
I've seen
buddies.
green ones, with the green official ones, but with the Vyshyvanka pattern woven into sort of military clothes, but not quite how you describe that. But yeah, that's.
I am ink free, baby. I can never figure out where to go with it.
Even the train conductors had Vyshyvankas on the day, so everyone. It's more popular now than ever. To be fair, Absolutely. It was when I first got it in 2018. It was like special occasions, and you didn't really see it very much. Now it's everywhere. Everybody's wearing it through the day, and it's changed. It's all changed.
Well, everyone, may you have a good week.
Are we done?
We're almost there.
We'll have
if you guys,
next Friday.
Again, subscribe, check out the articles, reboost the articles. I don't know anyone else broadcasting from Ukraine for you, but we do. We like to do it. We're going to keep doing it because that's what we do. So, you know how we do this. Slava Ukraini.
Slava.
І пиздець Російської Федерації.